We're always dancing, right? Whenever we're doing the show, we're always dancing. Hey, everybody, welcome back to So Victory Live. This is our last episode of the year. I'm really excited. But you know what? Tonight, she's dancing away this one. And tonight, what's going to be really, really cool is I don't know, sometimes I don't feel myself a forgiving person. Do you feel yourself a forgiving person sometimes, Kelly?
Overly forgiving, Seth. Overly forgiving.
Anyways, everybody, this is going to be a great episode because we have a guest who's going to talk about, forgiving the unforgivable. Great story. Get ready to have some goosies. But before we get started, we'll get our intro going and we'll see you in a few seconds. Hello. Welcome, everybody. I am Zafzan, one of your co-hosts here with my partner in crime that way. I'm hoping I'm pointing it the right way. Right there, all the way from down under. Right? Kelly Kingston, all the way from Brisbane, everybody. Whoop, whoop. If you're here, say hello. Say hello in the comments so that we can say hello to you properly. In case you're here for the first time, you are watching So Victory Live, fireside stories to ignite and inspire victories. I see a few eyeballs here. If you're here, say hello. Don't forget to say hello.
Hi, everyone.
Kelly, can you believe we're in episode 22 and the last episode for the year? 22, ending the year 2022. Whoop, whoop.
That is
2222. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's a spiritual number for somebody. Y'all go check it out, right? Welcome, everybody. Tonight's episode is going to be one that will close the year with a bang, I hope, and lots of so goosies. Right, Kelly? Are you looking forward to this?
I'm really looking forward to this. Yeah.
So our topic for tonight, the conversation and the storytelling is going to focus on forgiving the unforgivable so you can share your story powerfully. And with our guest, who is that again, Kelly?
Her name is the beautiful Brenda Adelman. Brenda is an award-winning actress, the recipient of a Hero of Forgiveness Award, and has a master's degree in spiritual psychology. She's been... I know, right?
We talked about spiritual. Here
it is. She's been interviewed on Fox TV News and NPR. She's performed her critical acclaimed one-woman show, My Brooklyn Hamlet, based on her life story and spoken on how to use your life story to heal. I so can't wait to hear this. It's going to be so inspiring. Inspiring others and making money for over 12,000 people worldwide for audiences as diverse as women prisoners, youth at risk, spiritual communities, and at theatre festivals. Brenda is a speaker, coach, and a solo show mentor with clients presenting their stories on stage in US, Canada, and Europe.
Whoop, whoop! Help us welcome Brenda Adelman to the stage.
Woo! How are you? So excited to be here.
Oh, I'm glad you're here because I've been admiring your backdrop in the green room, and I'm like, I want to be wherever she is at right now. See, she even has her mic, all set up right back there. So, and we have the fire going on right now. Brenda, thank you so much for being here with us, and we're really excited to get you started. I'm not gonna, I'm not going to. I see actually Claire saying, "Wow." You're right about that, Claire. Wow. So I know you will have a story for us, and this is going to be one of, I think, our most inspiring stories of 2022 as we, end our episode 22 in the year 2022. So Brenda, I know you have pictures for us, so we're going to put this up and get you started, and then Kelly and I will come back and start a whole conversation about this story that you have. All right, folks, make sure you tune in and we will be right back. And Brenda, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So, I have a story that I would say most people would find unforgivable. And what my hope is that you hear what happened to me and how I lost my family in one night, and it inspires you to know that it's possible after the biggest loss, the biggest betrayal, to find love, peace, joy, and forgiveness and self-forgiveness again. So here's a picture of me with my dad. I was definitely daddy's little girl growing up. I was the apple of his eye. That was one of the rare occasions when he took a vacation. He used to work all the time. And but when he did have time off, he would spend time going to the park with me. That was in Disney World or near Disney World. And I worked for him when I was in high school. So I was definitely daddy's girl, even when I was an adult. My mom was my quirky best friend. Oh, my dad was like an alpha male Guido from Brooklyn. My mom, also from Brooklyn, but a quirky bohemian artist who took me traveling with her all over the world and read Shakespeare to me from the time I was 3 years old as a bedtime story. She was my best friend. One of the last trips we took together, I remember, was to Hong Kong. She went to a photography convention and took me with her. We were codependently close, kind of like I was with my dad, whereas they were the center of my world too. So where they could not be there for each other, I was there for them. In an unhealthy way, kind of like being the husband to my mother and the wife to my father, in the way of caring so much about them to the detriment of going after my own goals, my own dreams, my own life. I moved to California, fell in love, moved to California. This was New Year's Eve. I spent New Year's Eve with my parents in New York City. It was actually New Jersey. We partied. My fiance flew in from California, and we had a beautiful night, except that my mother was depressed. My father had left her the year before for another woman, and they got back together. But I don't know if you know anybody like this, but my mother was someone with so much potential. She was this prolific artist, had so many friends, but she was so afraid that he was going to cheat on her that last year that she wouldn't let him out of her sight. She didn't see her friends. And I don't know what was really going on behind the scenes with them, but that was my last night in New York before moving to California with them. And then 9 months after I moved away to California, that's just a picture of my dad when I was growing up with his gun in the kitchen. My father shot and killed my mother. And within months moved in with my aunt, my mother's sister. So when I talk about forgiving the unforgivable, in that one night, I lost my mother, I lost my father. For a brief time, I lost my brother, who was who I was very close with. He was my half brother, so it wasn't his father. And so in that moment, even though I knew that my father taught me how to shoot a gun when I was a kid, I could not bear losing my father in that same night. So I chose to believe lies that he told, even though there were 8 hours before the police were called, his gun was gone. So in one night, I lost my whole family. What I'll say is, after the depression, the darkness, I started writing. It was one of the keys to my healing. And in writing during my sleepless nights, I had broken up with my fiance, really didn't want to be anyone to witness the pain I was in. I felt like such damaged goods. When I was writing at night, the truth of how I was feeling would come out. And I wrote about 100 poems in 30 days, and they were vile. They were angry. Me, Brenda, I identified as a nice person, but the truth of the rage that was inside me came out. One of the poems I wrote became the first scene of my now critically acclaimed one-woman show that I tour throughout the world. and virtually now. And I realized that there was, in Shakespeare's Hamlet, his father is killed by his uncle and his uncle marries his mother, that there was someone somewhere in history that lived through something that I did. And so I actually have soliloquies from Hamlet inside my very Brooklyn story for when the emotions are too much. And this is actually a picture of me and my brother, who did not speak for several years. This is the power of forgiveness. He was hosting a huge Jewish theater festival in Vienna, Austria, where he lived, and he found out about the success of my show. And we did come back together when I made the decision to take my father to court for wrongful death after he got out of a 2.5-year prison sentence. My brother and I did that case together. And so I used all the forgiveness tools that I learned, that I teach, to forgive my brother, because I felt he abandoned me, but I realized I abandoned him too. And he produced my show at his theater and the conference in Vienna, Austria, years later. And that was after the show, on stage with a painting of my mother in the background. I have gone on to speak on the power of forgiveness. From about 2005 to 2014, I was focused on forgiveness, and also hired to do my one-woman show at a conference. That's Reverend Michael Beckwith at the time. He was the keynote, and I did my show, and then we were on a panel together. I've gone on, though, to speak and do my one-woman show all over the world for communities like women prisoners, youth at risk. I've done it at theater festivals. I've gotten nominated for Best Actress Award, gotten a Best Actress Award, the show to be seen and inspired other people. My message is about how do you forgive the unforgivable so that you can go on, so that you can have joy, so you can have peace. And the show, I was an actress already, was a vehicle for me to express myself. So I went from writing to expressing myself the way I teach, doing a talk or a show is full creative expression. Years later, I was asked to do my show during the High Holy Days in Arizona. Someone had seen my show, and why that was significant is because my mother died in between the High Holy Days on October 1st, 1995. And then years later, I was brought into a synagogue to be on a forgiveness panel with rabbis, and then also do my show and do a talk on forgiveness. I've also done talks on forgiveness for youth at risk, and I love working with youth at risk, actually, and also domestic violence coalitions, things like that. And I've gone on to now teach over 200 storytellers how to tell their stories on stage, and given them a platform as well, because my message is about forgiveness, but everybody else has their own story. But my process is very much about healing from your story as you're presenting it, because I made all the mistakes of like presenting when I was still so emotional. And that's where my master's in spirituality, spiritual psychology comes into play, because it's a very healing process as we're sharing it. And then I say surrender, because I did surrender to a higher power, whatever that is. For me, it was this moment in my deepest depression when I felt like there was a presence there. I was not ever brought up religiously, but I heard God, I felt God, and it was like, you're going to be okay. The first name of my show was Surrender to Brenda, the Red Hot Contender. My personal Hamlet. Now it's called My Brooklyn Hamlet. But it is about surrendering to the truth of who you are, making self-honoring decisions from that place. When I took my dad to court for wrongful death, it was from a place of self-honor and self-love, not from vengeance, because that vengeance turns in on itself. So that is Surrender to Brenda, the Red Hot Contender. And then those are different characters in the show. And then the Soul Story Lounge is something, yes, surrender to the truth of who you are. This is my membership site where I give a platform for my clients who are learning my method, the Soul Story method. And we come together because I feel like so much in this world is about like, tell your vulnerable story, but nobody teaches you how to actually do it and feel empowered by it, and how to empower the audience. And it's a tribe of people that are online, but it's not just like, what's your win and how do you learn these tools, but how do you also come together in truth? It's been a really tough couple of years. Like how do you heal yourself and come from a place of supporting other people while also learning techniques so that you can express yourself more fully, you know? So that's my Soul Story Lounge. I'm very, very proud of it. And everything is about listening to our souls. So thank you. I mean, thank you so much for having me.
Woo! 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 Folks, I just want to say this, me and Kelly were just like scribbling quickly, because one of the things, we don't really prep questions, folks, before we come on this show, because we've made a decision as a team, as the cast members. We're like, if we prep some of these questions ahead of time, we may lose some of the storytelling questions that we need to be asking during, the storytelling moment. So I see Kelly scribbling in the back. I'm like, I'm going to scribble too. But before we go into the conversation, folks, let me quickly say this, and then we'll go into a quick intermission right after the show. When the cameras go off, the conversations do not end. Okay. So I just want to put this out just in case you don't know about the show. Right after the show, all right, there's a post-show meet and greet. That means, if you have any questions or more intimate conversations about the story that Brenda just shared with us, you can join us right after this at live.sowvictory.com, and you can go to the agenda for the episode 22 post-show meet and greet. Now, we'll be right back right after this intermission. Don't forget, go grab your drink, your snack, or whatever, and come back and join us. We'll see you in a few minutes. So Victory Live is all about sharing stories to ignite and inspire victories. We are here on Wednesdays, and our first, third, and fifth Wednesdays, we go live at 11 a.m. New York time, and second and fourth Wednesdays at 9 p.m. New York time. And you can get all this information at sowvictory.com/talk show. Now, after the live broadcast, you're invited to join us in a post-show meet and greet where you can engage and have more intimate conversations with our cast members and guests. You can go to live.sowvictory.com and join us in our studio lounge for the meet and greet. We'll see you then. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm just going to move Brenda right over there. I'm going to move Kelly right over there because I'm going to just go right there. All right, Kelly, I'm going to let you kick this off because I know you've been scribbling a lot of notes in the back. I know you have a lot of questions. So I'm going to get you started.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Brenda, I just want to honor you for sharing this story and being able to support so many other people to do the same thing. First and foremost, acknowledgement. So, wow. I feel that we have similar stories, but yours just takes the cake with so much that you had gone through. The one thing that Zeph and I were typing in the background was surrendering to the truth of the authenticity around the inner calling about, who's wrong, who's right, why was this happened, why was this taken from me, and why didn't I have a choice? So I would love to know that pivotal point that you woke up or you were in your car or something that led you to, oh my gosh, I have to forgive. I have to forgive my brother. I have to forgive my dad, and even forgive my mum for being in that space of being there.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that first moment where you go, oh, that I have to forgive?
Yeah. There were a lot of moments. So the first moment I actually think that opened it all up for me was I had those horrible, like I was in such a depression and couldn't sleep, and I thought about suicide all the time. I just wanted to be with my mother, and it was that I said I felt God, presence, universal source, whatever it was. I heard everything's going to be okay. And it was from that place, then other opportunities started to come to me, like that master's in spiritual psychology, where I actually learned what forgiveness was and that it wasn't like condoning anything. And then I had this moment. I did have this moment that was really pivotal. It's in my show. I wrote a poem, and I was taking a class at Agape, actually, which is a spiritual center, and the homework was to do something. I can't remember what it was, but this poem channeled through me. And I realized that my father and I were one. And that if I was hating my father, I was hating a part of myself, and I was never going to do that. And from that moment, I then created a ceremony of release. And I think I started to get myself back, because once the anger lifts like that, like I didn't want to hurt myself. I started to create a life that I love again, and creativity and stuff like that.
Ooh,
Wow.
I'm resonating with that just because. Just because all my soul sisters out there know my story. And I think this is the season of the word surrender. I don't know how many times this month, Brenda, the word surrender has not only appeared or showed up for me to do the work on, but I actually, because I'm an Airbnb host, there was an Airbnb guest who kind of last minute, I didn't tell you this yet, Kelly, but she kind of booked the stay like last minute, and she was having some challenges in her life, and she's working through some stuff. And then I said to her, well, I don't know if this helps you, but this is something that I'm working on. It seemed to be helping me. And that's one word. It's called surrender. And she looked at me, you're like the second person tonight in the span of 10 minutes who mentioned that word to me. And whew, I think that this is why this show is going to be the powerful closer for 2022. And I think we brought the right person. See, things happen for a reason,
well,
right?
You too, because I had one of those slides without a caption. I'm like, oh, put surrender on it.
Yes. Yes. And that's why I'm having so goosies. Hey, everybody, if you're having so goosies, just drop that hashtag in the comments, and we will try to track that. Well, before that, I just want to say, in case you're just tuning in or you're watching this on replay, you are watching SOW Victory Live, fireside stories to ignite and inspire victories. This episode with our guest, Brenda Adelman, we're talking about her story, which is all about forgiving the unforgivable so you can share your story powerfully. And that's probably why when we started SOW Victory Live, Brenda, we said we wanted to focus on storytelling, because we had so many speakers at our last summit, and we said we wanted to get to know our speakers. We wanted to get to know our members of our community, and see, it's led us to a closer of episode 22 of the year 2022, and the powerful word is surrender. I'm having so goosies.
Yeah, and partly the reason why the title of this episode is what it is because of the nature of my story and how vocal I've been about it. I have a lot of people and clients who come to me, and they have these big stories, but they didn't have the shift yet to completely move out of why did this happen to me to, okay, now that this happened to me, how can I be the hero of my life? And so the forgiveness comes into play, because, it's not about forcing yourself to forgive someone, but once you really understand it's for you, you still set healthy boundaries. I forgave my father completely, and I took him to court for wrongful death. But, it's about how do you heal and love on those parts inside you that still hurt, so that you can tell your story more powerfully, because you're not affected by what someone else says. Instead, you're actually activating people to heal versus them worrying about you, or you're not sharing enough because you haven't dealt with your emotions.
Absolutely. And Claire says here, so true, finding the strength, even things get very tough and falling apart. Absolutely. And I think what you said here, in Kelly kind of, highlighted this as forgiveness. And it's so true, because this is what I was going to ask you in doing the surrendering work, right? The work with surrender. I am sure when you said it out loud verbally, right? Maybe you can walk us through this process or this emotional process where I'm sure people around you probably couldn't figure out, like, you forgave your dad? Like, I'm sure people said that.
Or
right?
They're so angry at my aunt. Like, I do the show all over the world. I do talkbacks, and some people will be like, how could you have forgiven her? They'll be equally as upset about that. And then, I say, because it's for me.
Exactly.
I'm selfish like that.
There was once upon a time. I thought of the same thing too, where I go like, yeah, but then, like you said, Brenda, this is our personal journey, right? Folks, if you're out there and you can resonate with what Brenda is saying, like, surrendering is about, forgiving also in this journey of forgiveness. There's a lot of forgiveness for ourselves because it
Yeah,
begins with us, right, Brenda? Because
it
if we're not
begins with
forgiving
us,
ourselves,
because we can only forgive someone else to the extent that we forgive ourselves, just like we can only love someone else to the extent that we love ourselves. So it is all about self-forgiveness. It's all about, I had to forgive myself for trusting my father. Like, why did I trust him? Like, all these things of like that we beat ourselves up for that we don't even realize. But then how do I forgive myself for that without making him wrong? Because the second step of my 3-step forgiveness process is, giving up the need to be right. But that need to be right is in that first step, because that'll also move you out of denial and not going into spiritual bypass and like everything's okay. It's not about being a doormat. It's about looking at things as objectively as you can, doing whatever you need to release the energy inside of you so your day is not wrecked because you're angry about someone else, or you're so unconscious about it that you're taking it out on somebody else or on yourself, through addiction or whatever.
so true. So true. Kelly, what are the other things that come to mind for you in just listening to the story?
Yeah, I feel that the word awareness has come up for me a lot through through everything Brenda's talking about, and bringing the awareness of our feelings and our emotions in where they're at and where they're sitting in our bodies and what dysfunction or dis-ease they're actually creating. And so that it's all just we all need to surrender it. We all need to forgive it, but being aware of the processes and that whole thing, I think, Brenda, it's amazing. I love. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So when we're having fun, the time always runs out, but we have a few more minutes, but I do have this one question, which I think many of our audiences can use this as a tip and a tool to help them too. Because as you were telling a story, you said you use some of your forgiveness tools in your journey of power of forgiveness, right? Would you mind sharing 1 or 2 forgiveness tools that you've used in this journey?
Yeah. And there's different tools for the different stages. And I also want to say, I don't tell anyone they have to forgive. It's your path. It's your life. Like,
Yep.
If you want to forgive, you don't want to forgive, don't forgive. But I hope you will, because I know it's on the other side.
Because it's for us.
So, for example, one really important technique that really changed things for me was freeform writing. It's different from journaling. I used it to get my emotions out. It was very hard for me, believe it or not, to get out my anger, because I'd been taught to, respect my father, to love my father, to be a nice person. It's, I think, harder for girls and women. But it's allowing yourself the freedom, and it's something you can do on your own or go to an anger workshop or something like that. But you can, write like, well, it's a little bit bigger process. It's 15 minutes to 2 hours, no longer than 2 hours, because you don't want to be indulging in the emotion, no shorter than 15 minutes, because usually, if you're not thinking, you might be writing what you have to do later in the day. You'll get something deeper. 15 minutes to 2 hours. You never reread the freeform writing because it's about releasing your emotions. But quickly, what I'll say is, like with anger, on the top of the page, I could say something like, how do I release this anger? And then I write without thinking, which would be anger. And in the first person present tense, I would say something like, I can't breathe, but I would do it with the energy. People are so afraid to like use the energy and move it through. And then it shows up in different ways. Like I said, addictions and all kinds of other things, overwork, and then, you have a conversation with yourself, not from the ego, from that inner guide that's like there to listen and love and not give advice. You have to be careful that it's not the ego. And then at the end, you give thanks to yourself for listening to yourself. And then you set it on fire safely, or get it out of the house. And then in my master's program, they would have us do that for 30 days at a time. I probably did 4 different versions of that, and it literally released so much anger from me. Putting your story on stage is another way to do it. If you work yourself into the roles, like I play like 12 people, but playing my father, I couldn't play him only as a villain, because a good actor does not play their character as a villain. So I had to look at the whole human versus just what he did that night. So that's why I feel like there's writing that's so healing, but presenting the way I teach certainly is so healing as well.
Do you feel that creative people, tend to be more animated like me or like you and prefer to like put it on stage? Or Kelly and I just love to act it out.
Oh
But
my
some
God,
people-
introverts. It's so hard for that. What I'll say is even extroverts, when it's your own story, it is different. They're scared too. I was scared. I was terrified because when I started telling my story, I hadn't dealt with the shame or that I felt like I was damaged goods. It was only with the inner process but I can act like so big, but then when it came to acting my story, it's very vulnerable. That's why, the second part of my healing process is overcoming your emotions and working with things like freeform writing.
Is there another one before we go? So forgiveness technique number 1, freeform writing. Is there a number 2 that you'd like to share with us?
So in that first step 2, which is moving out of denial into the reality of what is acceptance of what is. In that kind of freeform writing too, you can be a victim. Like, be a victim, embrace the victim, because if you don't, it is going to show up in other areas with other people that are closest to you. Or you're going to push people away. Something's going to happen because it's unresolved when it's compartmentalized. But in the second step, it's giving up your need to be right after you've been so righteous. So one of the exercises I give for that, I have a book, I have a book on Kindle with this in it, is it's putting yourself in that person's shoes, like really putting yourself in their shoes. How did they grow up? Did they have an abusive parent or two? Did they have promise when they were little? Were they ever hurt? Like, because having that compassion, a key into, or thinking about them when they were a little kid before their personality took over, or whatever else, mental illness or whatever else came to them, thinking about them as that little child. It doesn't make you weaker if you're not in direct contact with them. Sometimes people are afraid to do that because they don't know how to set a healthy boundary. That's why healthy boundary setting is really important too. Like moving from a hard boundary to what I call a healthy boundary. Hard boundary is sometimes needed when you're like, I'm not talking to that person, I'm cutting them out of my life, which is fine if you have to, but you don't want to stay in that because, again, you're literally cutting off your heart to other people and to yourself. So then you go into a healthy boundary, which is doing some of this other work.
Wow, I'm feeling. Are you feeling it, Kelly? We will have a lot to talk about in the post show, everybody. In case you didn't see this after the show, right after the cameras just go off, right? You're invited to just post show meet and greet, and the link is live.sowvictory.com. Just go into the agenda and click on the session for episode 22, post show meet and greet, and join us, the cast members, and for more post-show, more intimate conversations, some things that you probably didn't come up on the show, and you want to have a conversation with Brenda and us, Kelly and I, please join us there. But before
let me just say one thing, because there's a disclaimer. I'll also say I'm not a therapist, and I advise that anyone who needs to go to therapy or needs something like that, they should do that, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Know what is good for you. Kelly, anything before we go?
No, I'm just a little bit lost for words. I'm kind of gathering up thoughts to talk about in our group chat.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Brenda, for being so open and, sharing your story, because we do believe here at So Victory Live, storytelling is such a big, big way of us being out there and trying to make an impact in this world as little as possible, one step at a time, one day at a time. And for all of you folks who are tuning in live here with us, I just want to say thank you and for joining us. And I know many of you will still come back and watch the video on demand or the replays. Make sure to connect with Brenda, because we will have her information and her link in our portal where you can get all that information. In case you didn't find it or you can't find it, all you have to do is drop a comment at any of the social live streaming links that you are watching this from, and just give a shout out, and we'll definitely get you connected to Brenda. I just want to say thank you so much, Brenda, for being here. And Kelly's put up already. Thank Thank you. Thank you. And for all of you folks out there, this is our last episode of the year. We will be back next year. But until then, and even Claire is saying, thank you so much. Thank you for impacting so many people. And our Canadian sister right there. We have Canadian sisters. We have Australian sisters. Oh, this is awesome. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, everybody who's been supporting us this year on So Victory Live. This just fireside chat where we ignite stories that celebrate and inspire victories. Until then, we'll see you next time in our next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.